Hello YouTube and welcome back to Be a Loser. In this video we're going to discuss the 1-2 punch of weight loss, fasting and low carb, high fat. In previous videos we've discussed the long-term failings of calorie counting. Lowering our calories in eventually leads to an equal or greater decrease in calories out. This in turn leads to increased weight gain. That is why the calories in, calories out, or CRAP model has such a high failure rate. So we postulated that instead of calories being the culprit of obesity and T2D, perhaps it is hormones instead, most notably insulin. If increased insulin levels lead to increased weight, then decreasing insulin should lead to a decrease in weight. And as we've seen through various studies, that is exactly what happens. So rather than focusing on calories, we need to focus on insulin levels in order to control weight loss. There is some synergy between these two, but it is the reduction in insulin that is significant and long-term. So there are two obvious treatments for this: fasting and low carbohydrate diets. As we've also seen in other videos, refined carbohydrates stimulate insulin release and increase blood sugars more than any other food. Additionally, protein in high amounts can have the same effect. But fats do not stimulate insulin at all. So by eating very low amounts of carbs, moderate levels of proteins, and high amounts of fats, we can control overall insulin levels. And obviously, if you've been watching the current series, then you know that intermittent fasting accomplishes this as well. Nothing will keep insulin levels lower than the complete abstinence of food. In fact, there was a study showing the efficacy of both diets for just this purpose. As you should know by now, I love studies. Links in the description. So summing this study up, the subjects were type 2 diabetics and had been on a diet consisting of 55% carbohydrates, 15% protein, and 30% fat, which is pretty close to the standard diet recommended by doctors and dietitians. One group in this study was put on a carb-free diet, that is to say less than 3% carbs, 15% protein, and 82% fat. It's also important to note that they were being fed 25 kilocalories per kilogram, meaning that a 70 kilogram or 155 pound man would eat 1,750 calories per day over 3 meals. So they were not receiving the benefits due to calorie restriction, contrary to what most doctors and dietitians still tell us. I'm sure you've heard the mantra, calories are everything. The other group in this study did a 3-day fast, with results being tested on the 3rd day. And the results of the study showed that the low-carb diet gave 71% of the beneficial effects of the fasting period. Not too shabby. In fact, the standard recommended diet causes serious elevation in blood sugars, which would obviously be a serious problem for diabetics. But the strict low-carb and fasting diets showed glucose levels to be much more even and consistently lower. But we must remember that blood sugars are only the symptom, and it's actually elevated insulin levels that are the true cause of weight gain, obesity, and T2D. And the results of the study showed that the standard diet had huge spikes in insulin levels. And even the LCHF diet showed some spiking, though less severe. Only in the fasting group did insulin remain low with very little increase. So if LCHF just isn't enough to lower insulin levels and reverse insulin resistance, which, as you may remember, was exactly the conundrum that I was facing, that's when we start fasting. Remember that controlling weight loss and curing T2D is done by controlling insulin. Strict LCHF still contains protein, which has an effect on insulin. So unless we eat a diet made up of 100% fat, which is somewhat ridiculous long term, The best and easiest way to reduce insulin levels is through fasting. So remembering once again that insulin is the primary cause of obesity, albeit not the only cause, then we know that lowering insulin will cause weight loss. So eating a good, strict LCHF diet of whole foods will aid in this. But if we begin to see that this is not enough, then fasting is the answer. And if we choose not to eat LCHF, then fasting is the only answer. That's right. The worse you eat, meaning carbohydrate-rich, highly processed foods, the more often and longer you will need to fast in order to see results. So let's finish this video with a quick analogy from Dr. Fung. Imagine that you live on a street of houses. Each house represents a cell in the body. Now, the people in this neighborhood are friendly and leave their doors open, just as cells in the body are open to receiving glucose. The streets in this neighborhood represent the bloodstream. Every day, a truck comes down the street with a bunch of garbage, which represents glucose. The truck dumps all the garbage in the street and it leaves. Now along comes the garbage man who represents insulin. He wants to get rid of all this garbage in the street. He sees all the houses with their open doors, so he just pushes the garbage from the streets into the houses. After a few days of this, the houses become filled with garbage, and the owners who don't want a bunch of garbage in their homes, of course, close and lock their doors. And that is insulin resistance, the closing of the cells to glucose. We'll discuss that much more in depth in our T2D series. But for this video, it's important to know our options when our body reaches this point. So going back to the analogy, if your house is filled with garbage, you have two options. Stop putting garbage in by eating an LCHF diet, or start throwing the garbage out by intermittent fasting. Or you can use super option number 3 and do both. Intermittent fasting plus LCHF for even quicker results. Okay, that's it for this video. We'll be back soon with another video in this series. As always, I encourage you to like our videos, comment on them, and of course, subscribe to the channel so that you'll be updated when new videos post. Please like us on Facebook and visit us at our website, bealoser.today. There are links to both in the description of each and every video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep being a loser.